Welcome to Masters of Product Management, a show that gives you real-world techniques and cutting-edge strategies to learn, apply, and succeed in product management. Now, here's the master himself, Stephen Haines.
So for today's program, what I really wanted to do is share some thoughts with you guys about product launches. What I want to try is to drive home a couple of important points that I want you to be able to think about when you're doing your product business cases. Now, that's interesting. It's the business case. And I've really given a lot of thought to this topic. And I got to tell you, I'm really perplexed, if not bummed, because I just don't understand why these product business cases that I study in these companies that I work with fail to achieve the targets. And to me, product failure rates continue to stay at extremely high rates. Think about this. Most of the research suggests, the research that I've done in my company and others, that company failure rates are extraordinarily high, anywhere between, let's say, 70 and 90%. And product failure rates are as high. And some of the root causes are in the business cases for those products. But what does this have to do with product launches? Well, think about it. Just let's digress for a second. So let's say we have lots and lots of statistics. People then study this stuff. They write books. They write books on lean and speed and agility. And then you get this idea that what they're trying to do is go so fast, they're force-feeding stuff to market. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you go faster and do it quicker, that you're going to increase the chances of product success. And if the statistics on product success haven't moved in several decades, I think it's worthy of reflection. And sometimes when I'm speaking on the topic or delivering a workshop or doing one of my launch labs, I ask people in the audience, tell me why your product launches are successful, or tell me about why other companies' product launches are successful. So I get half the audience to do that. And then I talk to the other half of the audience and they say, tell me what makes launches or products unsuccessful. And guess what? They're mirror images of themselves. There's another thing that I've noticed, and that is in the technology space. And this was borne out very recently, maybe a month or so ago. I was in Palo Alto giving a talk to a bunch of technology people, mostly product people. And they are so incredibly passionate about their technology. And when we pull ourselves back from that, I have to go through the enthusiasm, or just sort of pull the enthusiasm aside and say, but who's it going to help? Why are you guys developing this? And so we try to have that conversation about that. So let me just veer off for a second, because I was just thinking about the story about a company that I was recently working with. So I was working with a company. I would say it was an overgrown startup. It was probably about 2 years in the making. There were about 400 people working there, very, very well funded, very, very interesting. And so I was brought in to facilitate a team of people so that they can get this product to market. Now, think of just getting everybody in the room. Not only that, for about 2 weeks before that, I was coaching them in the homework they needed to bring in. We got a really, really great room. I had lots and lots of wall space. People brought in their models and their prototypes and all that stuff. What we really needed to do is craft a go-to-market plan for this product. What was also interesting is the company had advance orders, and it was December, and the promised date for the first delivery was February. So you got to believe that there's a lot of stuff going on there. And so there really wasn't a launch plan. There wasn't any kind of a roadmap to go to market. And upon drilling more deeply into the topic, I really discovered that they, as a team, had not been talking to one another. They were working in different departments in different cities and things like that. So I said, we're going to do something first. We're going to create a launch plan statement of intent. And everybody looked perplexed, including the president of the company was in the room. And there was a little bit of pushback. And they said, well, what do you mean a statement of intent? And I said, what do you think you want to do? What are you launching? Talk to us about the strategy. tell us about who the product is for and why they would want to buy it, as if you were a customer asking questions about what you wanted to be able to do and what you wanted to buy or what problem you were trying to solve. Now, this is not rocket science to me, and you'd think that this technology company would have thought of many of these things. And then I ask another question. Are the customers ready? Is your company ready to deliver it? Is the product really, really ready? And the president stopped the conversation. He said, well, of course we're ready. And then everybody in the room got silent. So it was time for some therapy. And the head of R&D looked really, really worried. And I asked her what was going on. And she said, this is not a product that's ready for prime time. We haven't even begun integration test. Okay, so that one got me going. And then there was another person who was in charge of operations and deployment, was very, very new in the role. And they had no idea how they were going to end up delivering the product. And then we had a free-for-all. And so I had to put a timeout on, and I said, okay, listen, we're going to need some therapy. And that's exactly what we did. And we really had to talk through some of these things because, it was a fairly new company, had a lot of new technologies. There'd been a few acquisitions along the way. Development teams were working in 3 different cities, 2 in the US, 1 in Europe. So I decided, well, why don't we try to start figuring out who's doing what? And I drew on the board what looked like an org chart. And I said, let's just talk about our entities. We have hardware, we have software, we have an integration. But let's try to visualize who's supposed to be doing what, because with these kinds of products, you have to be clear about roles and responsibilities. This is not a development product or project. This is a business, and we have to look at this product as if it were the business of the company, which it exactly was. And one of the things that was extremely apparent, because I ended up being the object of everybody's angst, and I said, the reason you're all pointing fingers at me is because there isn't a launch leader. For such a significant launch, somebody has to be in charge. And it wasn't the product manager in the room. And everybody was looking at that guy. And I said, don't be looking at him. And the reason is that he did not have the position authority to get everybody moving in the right direction. And I asked the question outright, who do you think has the position authority in this room to move this launch along? And everybody turned to the president of the company. And he was miffed, I think. But then what we really figured out was, yes, what we needed was some leadership. Launches of this magnitude and significance require leadership and clarity in those roles and responsibility. Okay, so I'm going to put a punctuation mark because I think I got a little bit off track. But to me, the reason I wanted to have this conversation was that the product launch is probably one of the most important, most visible moments of truth for any company. And the way I've seen it is some firms treat it like a one-time event, but it's really a bunch of different activities that have to be carried out over a longer time span. And that it's got to be shaped in such a way that you can get all the wheels or all the gears in the organization aligned so that you can get to the point of announcement. Now, when I talk to people about this, and everybody says, well, Apple does a great job. We can do what Apple does. Well, Apple has the ability and the market muscle to be able to build the buzz and the anticipation. But think about the thing that they do on the day of the announcement. And everybody knows what's coming anyway. But the announcement is there's lots and lots of hoopla.
Masters of Product Management is brought to you by Sequent Learning. Sequent Learning provides real tools for success in product management, strategy, and marketing. Find out more at sequentlearning.com. That's sequentlearning.com.
So what does it take to get launches right? And what I want to do is discuss a few things. The first thing I'm going to do is discuss the space shuttle. And why I'm going to discuss the space shuttle is this. When a space shuttle has to go into orbit, it can only go into orbit on a certain day. Or think of a different scenario down at the launch pad down at Cape Canaveral. If they're going to launch a probe or a satellite It's got to be slotted into orbit, and it's got to be slotted onto a journey based on very, very complicated mathematical calculations. The planets need to be aligned. The sun needs to be in a certain place. The Earth's position against all of these orbs have to be aligned. And I think about that. The marketers use the term market window. Well, whatever word you want to use, you've got to be able to know when you need to be in market and why. If you're a person or a company that produces consumer electronics, you know that if you want to make the Christmas season or a summer season of the following year, you need to have a space at the Consumer Electronics Show in January in Las Vegas, where the buyers and the tire kickers are going to be, so that orders can be fulfilled and that production can be ramped up, or whatever it is that has to be done to get the product to market on time. Because imagine missing that season. Okay. So that's one thing. The second thing, there's a sort of an opposite piece to this window of opportunity. And that is, you need your sales guys to be able to carry a bag into market. And regardless of how you sell, if you try to get salespeople to do things when they're trying to close out a fiscal quarter or a fiscal year, when their quotas are dependent on it, they're not going to be available to be trained and to get on the comp plan and to do the things that are necessary. So think about other people in the organization who need to be synchronized, moving in the same direction. All right. So that's one thing. The second thing, as I mentioned when I first started out, is the business case. To me, the business case and the launch plan are linked. Why a business case is done differently is beyond me. But we've got forecasts, we've got marketing plans, we've got all kinds of things going on. And as I've alluded to, we have these gears of the organization, different people in different departments doing things at different speeds. And they're not just going to stop to do it. And imagine trying to get on a highway at speed. Like you're on the on-ramp, you're going 75 miles an hour, and there's a traffic jam up ahead. So we've got to figure out whether or not we have both the capacity and the capability to get things to market. All right. Now, speed can be dependent on things like, well, is it a major product? Is it an update? Is it something brand new? It really is going to depend on how fast you go. But regardless of how fast, the organization has to have the capacity to digest this. And if they don't, they get what I call organizational indigestion. That means that nothing can move through the machine at the speed that's necessary. And therefore, whatever path to market you think you're going to be able to make, whether it's an on-ramp to a highway or whatever it's going to be, is not going to be paved the way you want it to be. It's going to be bumpy and you're going to get a crappy launch. So that's something else to think about. I also think about things like documentation and training and all those things. When I used to work at Oracle, and one of the things that happened there when we were trying to get product launched is that we had this product marketing group, and they were working separately from us. And they used to say to us, well, we're waiting for the product managers to get all the stuff done and all the documentation written. Well, there is a responsibility for some of those people to deal with creatives and things like that. So they're all sitting there with their hands on their hips, tapping their feet, waiting for us to get our stuff done, which meant that we were overloaded with other things. And our capacity was, as product people, were being compressed. And I have to tell you, it wasn't that fun. And I'll bet there are some people listening in understand exactly what I'm talking about. I also think we've got to have some metrics. If we're going to link the launch to the business case, think about this. I'm going to digress for a second. I studied in college Deming. Deming was the continuous improvement guy, and he had this model: plan, do, check, and act. And I think that was really an important thing or important method to be thinking about, because yes, you have your plan, you put it in place, see how well you're doing, and then sort of go back and do it again. I want to know things like, well, what was the time to the first order or first usage, or when am I going to get my first check? I've got to be able to figure out, in relation to the forecast that was in the business case, how am I doing? And I don't want to wait 3 months or 6 months or a year to look back and see whether or not I did what I said I was going to do. What I really want to find out is, as quickly as possible, is the meter starting to run? Because the changes that you have to make, whether it's strategic changes or other organizational changes, have got to happen quickly, because this is where lean and agility matter. It's not about the development process. It's about market agility that I really, really have to emphasize.
Looking for resources and best practices in product management? Just go to sequentlearning.com to gain access to real-world tools that can make a difference. It's all there at sequentlearning.com.
I was working with this industrial firm in Texas, and they were in the oil and gas services business, and they had been working on some very new products and technologies. And the VP of product management had said to me prior to a product launch, "Why is everybody looking so glum?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, these are products and technologies that nobody has. These are going to change our market." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, maybe because they don't know. Maybe they don't know enough." And he asked some more questions. And I said, "Do you know what some companies do when they're really doing something this dramatic? They have an internal launch." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "They have a party." I said, think of it this way, your employees are ambassadors to the marketplace. And so whether they're at a cocktail party or a professional event, whatever it is, they're carrying the message. You need to gear them up, almost train them sometimes, have a celebration, drop balloons from the ceiling, whatever it is to get people excited. Well, whenever you go back into this building in their corporate headquarters, they always have the launch board. Everybody in the company now knows what's being launched and when. And that, I think, is really, really a great thing.
Learn, apply, and succeed. Sequentlearning.com.
In business, especially when it comes to some processes, I tend to be checklist antagonistic. I know it sounds really weird, but checklists have their place. If we become checklist driven, sometimes we're not thinking about the aspects of the business that are so incredibly important. But when it comes to launching, checklists rule. And that checklists need to be looked at and updated and improved over time. Somebody's got to keep track of all the different types of lists that take place, because each launch might be a little bit different and they may need to be characterized. And you want to make sure that you're able to pull from the prior experiences, updating them, and making sure that you have the most accurate checklists over time. Okay? So as it stands, my belief is that launches can definitely be more impactful, and they really, really can be the catalyst for great outcomes. I think it's just a matter of homework, planning, and, of course, execution. I hope you enjoyed this chat today. Maybe you picked up an insight or two about effectively launching products, and I hope that you'll tune in next time. Bye for now.
This has been Masters of Product Management with Stephen Haines, but it doesn't end there. Just visit sequentbusiness.net to gain access to all of our shows, take advantage of free tools and resources, and subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. It's all there at sequentbusiness.net. We'll talk to you next time on Masters of Product Management on the Sequent Business Network. Learn, apply, and succeed. Sequentbusiness.net.